Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today I will be reviewing Harken coffee out of Vancouver, British Columbia. Currently outside of the Narrative Coffee on Wetmore Avenue in Everett, Washington, and I'm going to be trying the Marisol Urbano Washed Colombia. Let's go ahead and take a sip. And got the Narrative Coffee logo here. So real quick before I start talking about the coffee shop or the coffee roaster, the Narrative Coffee is just down the street from the Funko Toy Factory, so anybody that's a huge fan of those little pop Funko figures, the factory is just down the street, and there is the longest line to the factory that I have ever seen. I'm guessing that there's some new release or something that's dropping today that's causing that massive line. Let's talk real quick about Narrative Coffee. So they're a coffee shop in Everett, Washington. They won Sprudge's Award a couple years ago for being the best new cafe in the country. They're an amazing cafe, top 3 favorite coffee shop probably in the state of Washington for me. They have one coffee roaster, which is Belton's, a Everett local roaster on hand always. And then they typically have 2 coffee roasters, guest coffee roasters. In this case, it's Ilse out of Stamford, Connecticut, and Harken out of Vancouver, British Columbia. And then they offer 2 espresso options, a tame option and a wild option as they call it, and then 2 filter options, a tame option and a wild option. I went with the tame option for a change. The wild option was a natural Ethiopia cayenne mountain from Belton's, and I've had that coffee before, and I think it's a year-round coffee, so I think I'm always able to try that coffee if I wanted to. I'd also never heard of Harken before, so I looked up some information on Harken, and it looks like they are in Japantown in Vancouver. And I've been to Vancouver a lot in my life, and I've never heard of them up until I saw their boxes today. Very cool little design on their boxes, for whatever that's worth. And next time I'm up in Vancouver, I definitely want to go to their coffee shop and try them in person as well. I can't believe I had actually never heard of them. I have such a great idea and so much knowledge about the Vancouver coffee scene. Okay, let's talk about this coffee. And what was interesting about their box was they didn't really list any sort of flavor notes, and that's perfectly fine. This coffee is going to be neutral, and the only thing I'm going to kind of compare it to obviously is very neutral washed Colombia coffees. And for whatever that's worth, I'm really enjoying this coffee so far. The word tame can kind of come off as a little boring, but there's, you know what I keep getting from this is grape. There's definitely grape, so it's going to be chocolate and grape. And it's more of a neutral chocolate. It's not overly dark and it's not overly sweet, but kind of a little in the middle ground. And at one point I was kind of like, maybe grape jello, grape jelly, something like that. But it's definitely purple, and of course you're going to have just the tiniest bit of nuttiness from this coffee. Overall, well balanced, comes through at the end with a little bit of, tiny bit of smokiness and some pretty decent caramel actually. I mentioned the low acidity, and it definitely is very low on that acidity. Kind of comparing it straight across the board to other Colombias, there are pros and cons to this. I think the biggest pro is that, yeah, it is kind of neutral on the acidity. I feel like this is maybe one of the more neutral cups of coffee I've had in a very long time. This is something that's going to be a kind of a crowd pleaser, where you're not reaching too far on something that people won't like, but at the same time you're playing it very safe. This coffee for me is fine. I am going to finish the rest of it because it's cold and it tastes pretty decent. But that being said, I'm not blown away by it, and I don't think I ever expected to be blown away by it. So just kind of meeting my standards to a point, I think they did a fine job. Obviously, Narrative is going to be a highly recommend. One of the best coffee shops in the entire country for me. I have no problem putting it probably in the top 20 at worst, maybe top 10 in the entire country for me. As far as Harken goes, this Colombia specifically, I'm going to leave it between pass and recommend, because I think people that are very traditional, stuff that, I say that a lot, but stuff that is not going to blow you away. If you're in the mood for a perfectly middle ground Colombia, then this will hit the mark. I think it's slightly better than most middle ground Colombias for whatever that's worth, but it's definitely not blowing me away, and it definitely won't blow you away. I'll leave it at that. This right here has been a review of Harken coffee out of Vancouver, British Columbia. Thank you for watching.